Lift me up, take control, hold me down, don't let me go. Push it, baby, 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 push it, baby. Pull me deep, I hold my breath. Push it, baby, till you wake a sweat. Push it, baby, 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 push it, baby.
All right, we are back. Welcome to another episode of the Neutral News Network. I'm Brian alongside with Jake and Zach, and I'm back from the UK and had a couple weeks to relax. And man, let me tell you, that was great. 100%, you should take the chance and go overseas if you have your passport and have the opportunity. 100% would recommend it. But happy to be back. I know we were discussing before the podcast started today that this is the first episode that I've actually had natural lighting in my room uh, while we're doing a stream. That just shows you how long it's been since we've actually had one.
Yeah, it doesn't look like you're in a dungeon.
Well, I mean, I'm just in a dungeon with more light now. But
Yeah.
anyways, we are so happy to be back. Hopefully, you guys are excited for another new episode. We're gonna hopefully try and get back into more of a rhythm. But knowing me, I will screw that up at some point. So leave it to me. But outside of that, let's go ahead and crack into some ground news articles. All right. So Zachary just pulled up the ground news articles, and as you can see, um, there's a lot of stuff that happened with the economy today. I mean, just today, big news. U.S. inflation rose less than expected to only 2.4% in May, which that was only a 0.1% increase, which is lower than a lot of people were expecting. So interest rates took a drop today, and they actually raised the potential for a rate cut before the end of the year. And second, that we can see there is Trump says the United States gets a rare earth minerals deal from China, or gets rare earth minerals from China in trade deal. And that was also going on today. And I believe Trump said that it was just pending his approval on that trade
When you
deal
say
being signed.
when you say rare earth minerals, meaning like gold, silver,
No, so rare earth. Let me get a list of those real quick. Rare,
I don't know
because
what
that's a
rare earth.
great point that you bring up, Jake. Is that rare earth metals aren't really rare? They
Yeah,
just are.
I don't know what that means. I've never
Yeah.
heard that before.
So this is just quick Google search. Scandium, yttrium, cerium, neodymium, erbium, ytterbium, eurobium, galladium. So basically, these are a lot of like newer elements. They again, they aren't super rare though. Like it's just a misnomer in a sense. Like it's just like I think they were called rare earth metals because they were kind of discovered a little bit later. So I think scientists perceived that they were going to be rarer since it took us so long to discover
Or to
them.
find them.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I don't think that that's the case. However, it is true that China does have a lot of the world's supply of rare earth minerals, but the United States has its own too. But we don't have a lot of mines currently
Why
active
call? Why
to
still
to
call
get
them rare earth minerals? They're not that rare.
we're humans, man. Once we name something, it's like we really don't want to change it.
Yeah, I get it.
It's
I
just
get
like,
that.
I'm from South Charleston. There's no Charleston anywhere near us. So we could have renamed ourselves to something different. We were like, no, let's
Like
just keep it.
like Charleston.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we could have just called ourselves Charleston. We didn't. So yeah, humans are weird. We decided on the name and we were like, we'll keep it. We got it.
Yeah,
All right, and then
that's fair.
last but not least, EPA set to roll back rules that would limit greenhouse gases and mercury from United States power plants. Um, that's very fitting. I know we don't have anything pulled up on it, but there was actually not a power plant, but a mineral plant, like a mineral processing plant in Ohio, that released a very, very dangerous chemical into the atmosphere, and I believe put a lot of people under evacuation orders, and also believe had the entire county. Was it Vinton County, Zachary? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, Benton County.
Vinton County, yeah. So put Vinton County under notice. And the toxic gas is not one to be played around with. Not that many toxic gases are, but this one is definitely fatal if inhaled in moderate quantities. So obviously they wanted people to stay indoors and evacuate if necessary. So yeah, cutting regulations is something that this administration has been leaning into full force, and we will see kind of where this goes in the future. Obviously, we still invest in green energy on a daily basis in the country and around the world, but it'll be interesting to see if this becomes more of a trend or if this is kind of a one-off by the EPA. So, all right. Any questions from either of you on these three articles, or do we want to get into today's main event, which is going to be probably the next big storyline for a couple of weeks, if I had to imagine?
I vote let's just
I'm
get
good.
on into it.
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So let's get on into it then, as they said. Uh, so, as you know, probably if you're watching this, I assume that you are not totally under a rock, and if you are, that's okay. But right now there are protests actively occurring in many cities across the United States. So it's most prevalently being covered by the news in Los Angeles, California. Now, these protests are in relation to ICE raids that have been going on in the city, and people have been largely peacefully protesting in the streets of Los Angeles. Sometimes there's been a couple video instances of ICE agents being, turned around by people because they've kind of blocked off the street, they've cordoned off certain areas, and they've kind of forced them to take a different approach. But as these protests have gone on, the National Guard has been called in by President Trump, even though California's governor, Gavin Newsom, has not given him permission to deploy the National Guard, which I believe is illegal. I don't know off the top of my head if
Um,
that is. Go ahead, Jake.
I don't know. I don't think there's some weird legality to it. I don't know if
Mm,
it's exactly illegal, but I don't think it's necessarily illegal. I think it's just no president does
that's
this
true.
without the governor's like, hey, yes, let's do it. And I think it's something to do with the Insurrection Act, but I don't know.
Correct. And
From my
see, I
understanding,
think
you
that's
can do
right.
this. There's two different ways you can do it. Only one of them involves the Insurrection Act, which he did not use here. The
Right.
the Insurrection Act gives more power than the way Trump has done it currently, but I'm not entirely sure what he used to justify it this time. I'm not sure.
Correct. I think that's a good way to frame it. And additionally, Gavin Newsom has sued the Trump administration for doing this. So he's taken this to court to try and get the National Guard troops removed. And I believe, let me confirm this real quick with a quick Google search. All right. So, yes, this is 22 hours ago via CBS News. 700 Marines arrive in LA amid ICE protests as Newsom files suit to block um, their access. So, currently, the National Guard and the Marines are currently deployed in Los Angeles for
Did
these
they did
protests.
they did deploy the Marines?
Correct. Let me
Okay.
see. This is the exact headline. 700 Marines arrive in LA area amid ICE protests as Newsom files suit to block deployment. So I guess they're not technically deployed, but they are there. But I don't know, obviously since the National Guard was deployed, regardless of Newsom's approval, I could see them potentially uh, deploying the Marines anyways. Let me try and get the. Where
So
is
I'm
the
seeing that Trump justified the deployment to suppress a rebellion or enforce federal law.
So I sent you the link in your DMs, Zach, if you want to pull up this article here, just for visual purposes. Um, but I can see him using that as a justification for that.
Mhm.
However, it'll like again, it'll be interesting to see what the courts decide. Mostly
Yeah.
because kind of like it goes on to Gavin Newsom did not give them permission for uh, the government or for the Trump administration to deploy the National Guard. Now, for instance, I would say another prevalent use of the National Guard was actually in the state of Ohio during the Kent State protests
Mhm.
back in the 70s. Now, um, people were killed in that incident. I believe it was 4 or 5 people were killed. Uh,
Yeah.
and the National Guard was given permission by the governor at the time to be there to help quell those protests. So there was, I believe, another instance that I believe. Well, I think there was one other instance. Now that we're thinking about it, I believe it was during segregation. I believe might have been Truman or
Yeah.
Truman and bringing them in. What was it, in Mississippi or Alabama,
I think it
and
was Alabama.
and escorting the kids to school.
Yeah. Give me
Yeah.
a second.
Yep. Now, I will say, I know there's been a lot of the issues that people have been having with these ICE raids is a lack of personal accountability from these ICE agents. A lot of them are operating with masks covering their face, and people think that that's a violation of basically, uh, you basically spend money on tax dollars, right? You give the government your taxes, so just
Huh.
like if you get pulled over, you can ask an officer for their badge number, and they're supposed to give you their badge number, and identify themselves as a police officer, right? Well, in this instance, the ICE officers aren't doing that. So a lot of people are having issues with that aspect of them being out and about in neighborhoods, because it's just kind of one of those things like, how do you know that they are actually an ICE person and not just some vigilante on the street acting as one? You know what I mean? Now, I get where they want to be under some anonymity, because they obviously don't want people to come after them, or they don't want to be targets, things of that nature. But I feel like that's almost part of the job. I mean, it's the same thing as a police officer. I mean, people can go after police officers all the time, and sometimes people do, but that's just part of the job that uh, you know, you you take up that mantle when you swear an oath to that job. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Yeah. So people have been having issues with that, the kind of the reason I brought that up is because I was looking at that picture that was on that CBS article that we had up, and the all of the National Guardsmen do not have. Uh, you'd be able to see it, Zachary, but that Danica Patrick ad is right over
Right
top of
there.
the picture.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it technically it's like the thumbnail picture is underneath that. So I don't know if it'll work after the ad plays or not. But Um, yeah, none of the National Guard's troops are wearing any kind of face covering. Some are wearing sunglasses, but I mean that's to be expected. You're out in LA during the daytime. I would assume you'd be wearing sunglasses. But it looks like
Right.
there is a LAPD officer who is wearing a lower face covering to the back left of them. So definitely
And,
interesting. And as you can see, I mean
and is
that's a
that
large
to
crowd there.
is that to hide identity, or is that to like protect the face against potential gas?
So I was about to say this. So that could be the case, but I would assume that if it was gas, they would have respirators because there have
Mm,
been videos of officers out there with respirators on.
that's fair.
And additionally, that officer does have a full ballistic face shield in front of him. So,
Oh, I didn't see
uh,
the picture. Okay.
right, yeah, yeah. I'm just giving more context as
Yep,
best I
that
can.
makes sense.
But yeah,
So it's
so
yeah,
yeah, I mean, it definitely does seem like it's more to preserve
conceal.
identity than it is to
Mm-hmm.
protect yourself. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah, that's been another point of contention with this is just obviously people want accountability. I think that's the big thing is that you just want to hold these officers and officials to a higher accord. As you can see in that picture, almost all, if not every single one of those officers there is not wearing a face covering, which I like I said, I think that that's how it should be. It's just like because
yeah,
if an officer does something wrong, they should be held accountable to it. Just the same way
absolutely.
if they do something right, they should be rewarded for it.
Rewa-
It's the same yeah.
Not necessarily
They
rewarded. I mean, that is their job to uphold the laws. But
exemplary service. How about that?
yeah, yeah, they should
Yeah,
be recognized for yeah.
correct. Um, but I think another thing that some people have issues with as well is that um, this is going to cost about 130 to 140 million dollars as of right now with just current deployments. So this is not going to be cheap. Now then again, in the grand scheme of things, when it comes to the federal government, that's just dropping the bucket. But 134 million dollars is still 134 million dollars, and you know it's just 2,000 troops, National Guard's troops to start, but that could change. But if we're being honest, though, I mean, I can see why they've deployed some of these individuals. I mean, there were some instances of cars being burnt. There were some instances of properties, or not property, but like trees and things being lit on fire. Some
I've seen that
aspects of
too.
it, yeah, and some aspects of it have gotten violent, but nothing insane. I mean, let's compare it. If you talk about the protests in regards to George Floyd, I don't
Yeah, I
think
was
it's
gonna
on that
say.
level.
Yeah, I don't
And
think it's near that level yet. It
right,
might not even get to that level. We don't know.
correct, we don't know. But the thing is that it hasn't gotten to that level, but yet the armed forces presence seems to be
Telling a different
more
story.
extreme. Yeah.
Yeah.
So definitely something to keep an eye on and something to monitor. Uh, but this doesn't seem like it's going to be it. Um, there are many protests that are being scheduled around the United States for Flag Day, which, as you can see, is June 14th, which is No King's Day, according to this website. And it's also conveniently Donald Trump's birthday. um,
And I don't know if this is true, but I've continuously seen that he's doing a military birthday.
correct. He's having a military parade in the Capitol um, for Flag Day, and to honor this is what they posted. I believe it's to honor Flag Day and to honor the
Mm.
armed forces, the Army's 200th birthday, or not 200th birthday, 150th, no, 250th. Math.
Yeah,
Ah,
250th. Yeah.
yeah, 250th birthday. Um, so I believe that that's the justification for the parade. That's gotten some criticism from both Democrats and Republicans on the parade and why it's happening. But as you can see on that map that Zachary has pulled up, I mean, there are a lot of protests that are scheduled around the nation. I mean, you can pretty much throw a dart somewhere and you're going to be within a decent um, you're gonna
Range.
be yeah, you're gonna be pretty close to one. You're gonna be within driving distance. How about that?
Yeah.
And one of the
Yeah.
things I want to bring up real quick is much like the or unlike the protests, your BLM protests during that time, a lot of that was organized. There were organizers putting all of this together, getting people out there. The protests that we're seeing, for the most part, in LA, there were some in Chicago, I believe Austin, Texas, New York City.
I saw one in Columbus.
Yeah, they haven't really been organized. They've, especially the LA ones, they were spur of the moment as the raids were happening. Stuff just started happening. There was no organization to them. Now we're entering the organized protest phase. The
Yeah, 'cause-
mass
go ahead.
movement versus just, the people where it's kind of hitting close to home for them. They're the ones, I think, at the moment that are really getting out there, who are seeing their friends, family, communities impacted. This, King's or no King's Day, potentially will be the start of really mass organized protests.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. And I believe the last time that we really saw mass organized protests were probably, well, I don't know, and me being my age, I wasn't around like or very heavily involved at the time, but believe a lot of it was like the oh gosh, I just had it in my brain and I lost it. It's the man, Occupy Wall Street. That's it. Like the Occupy Wall Street protests after the Great Recession. I believe that those were pretty well organized and pretty massive at the time. What were you
So
gonna say?
is somebody not one? So they have, for each of these dots on this map, do they have
Mhm.
people that are a group that is organizing it,
So
or how does that? I guess I don't understand the logistics of a protest.
so I think your best bet is for context. You can go ahead and keep looking at that, Zachary. If it loads, yeah, okay. So trying to think. I mean, obviously, we're looking at that there. It doesn't say anything directly on who's putting on this certain one. Yeah, no. So go back to the main website if you can for me. Nope. There you go. So go in the upper right-hand corner to partners. And now scroll down. I mean, so obviously I believe these people, these partners, are probably individuals who have donated a decent amount of money to this cause. So you can kind of see who's funding these protests and things like that, and kind of
Oh,
helping them
okay, I
get
see.
organized. Yeah.
I was just curious.
So
That's yeah.
yeah, I mean
It's a
that's
pretty
kind of
big
what I'm.
It's a pretty big
I mean
protest.
this yeah, and this is a lot. I mean this is a huge list here.
Yeah,
So,
Bernie
but yeah, I mean
family.
yeah, some of the forward parties on there as
Yeah.
well.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I mean, you can see there's some North Carolina. Uh, I believe I saw Florida on there. Obviously, there was LA. There was Maryland, I think. Um, Greenpeace. So, oh yeah, there's the Florida one.
Wow.
I'm looking on my screen. So yeah, I mean, a ton of people, or and a ton of partners have pledged some money to making this happen. But yeah, so on the about page, it basically just explains, what they're doing. They defied our courts, deported Americans, disappeared people off the streets, attacked our civil rights, and slashed our services. No thrones, no crowns, no kings. So obviously, this is a direct protest against the Trump administration and Trump himself. And I think that just kind of begs the question is just what does this lead to? You know?
Well,
Yeah.
we already saw in Texas, I believe, the
Mhm.
governor there already deployed the National Guard in preparation for this. I'm willing to bet quite a few states. I would wager probably Illinois does, New York does, a lot of the states with the larger
Yeah.
cities. I'm willing to bet
Yep.
the National Guard gets deployed in most of them. Now, of course, the big difference is in this case, the National Guard would be under the control of the governor of the state and
Correct.
not
Yes.
the president. So,
Which I believe was the
Right.
case during the Black Lives Matter protests in Minneapolis, right? I mean, Tim Walz was under direct control of the National Guard. Is that correct? Or did they eventually deploy the National Guard to Minneapolis from the federal level? I can't remember.
I'm not sure. I can look though.
Okay. But yeah, on this website, it also talks about like just there's more on the about page. Like when you scroll all the way down to the bottom, it says, on June 14th, Flag Day, President Trump wants tanks in the street and a made-for-TV display of dominance for his birthday. A spectacle meant to look like strength, but real power isn't staged in Washington. It rises up from everywhere. But and that's the thing is that's why we're also telling you the fact that some of the justification that the Trump administration has used is that this is for the 250th birthday of the United States Army because they were obviously founded in 1775 prior to the Declaration of Independence because obviously we had to have an army even though it was kind of a ragtag army full of militiamen but it got the job done so uh, we
And
made
just
sure to make a couple.
to answer your question, Tim Walz did in fact deploy the National Guard during the BLM
Okay,
protests in
but
Minnesota.
not the federal government.
Correct. Yes, it was Walz.
Right.
that did
Just
it.
Tim Walz. Okay,
Yep.
got it. Cool. So yeah, I mean, if the state deploys the National Guard, that's not unprecedented. It's more so a big deal when the president deploys the National Guard. It's not obviously like the end of the world or anything like that, but it definitely should open your eyeballs a little bit more when that happens. So
It appears I believe it was Lyndon B. Johnson, I think is what it said.
Lyndon B. Johnson,
In
not sure, but that
1965.
sounds right.
Uh,
That sounds
Is that the
it,
Montgomery?
yeah,
yes.
the march from Selma to Montgomery, I think is what it was.
Yeah.
Was the last time it was deployed without the governor requesting it or being involved.
Right. Which, I mean, that doesn't shock me. Obviously, the segregationist South did not want this to happen, so the government had to step in. And the thing is that you can argue that the people who were against that can be, you know, on the same, like there are obviously different sides of this matter. I mean, Democrats are obviously against the National Guard being deployed in LA. Republicans were against the National Guard being deployed in uh, Alabama. Um, I think it's just different. It's different in this scenario. You know what I mean? This instance, we've got people who are going and taking people off the streets and deporting them. And obviously the optics of that are just not great, if we're just being completely honest.
Yeah.
Where the optics on, you know, Lyndon B. Johnson doing that, it's just here's this schoolgirl and other school children just trying to get to school in a desegregated area. Um, and you've got a bunch of people who are basically saying, like, no, we don't want you here. So the optics on the National Guard being there for one instance are a lot better than the other instance, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah, but to the people on one side,
yeah,
it looks fine because they're breaking the law.
correct. Yeah, and that's the thing is that it's all a matter of perception. It's all a matter of
Mhm.
perception.
Mhm.
I think that people. Sorry, I'm just looking at some of the graphics here that they've made. If there's money for a parade, then there's money for Medicaid. So obviously you can like
Wow.
print these out and put them on a poster and all this, that, and the other.
I'm sure there'll be
Um,
plenty of posters
yeah.
out there.
But yeah, it really is a good question. I'm curious, who like started this movement? Like who really started the No King's Day movement?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like who?
Like
Like you're right. Right. Which
yeah.
political figure actually
It was
started
George
this?
Soros.
Can you imagine? It's Elon.
Oh my God. No. But no, I mean it is interesting to kind of hypothesize about this. For general inquiries, please email us at info@nokings.org.
So from what I can find relatively quickly, Indivisible, which is a political activism
Yes.
group that's been around since 2016, and the 5051 movement. They are, which started on Reddit apparently, of all places.
Reddit.
So a combination of those two, mixed with a few other organizations, but those two seem to be the main ones that have been kind of responsible for putting all of this together.
Okay, so Indivisible. Indivisible movement. All right, let's see. Executive directors: Leah Greenberg and Ezra Levin. So these are the executive directors for Indivisible. Let's see. Leah Frances Greenberg is an American political activist and co-founder of the progressive nonprofit organization Indivisible. She's a co-author of We Are Indivisible, a blueprint for democracy after Trump, published in 2019. Let's see. She went to Carleton College in 2008. She's been part of multiple philanthropic organizations. And she's doing this with her husband. Interesting. Ezra Levin. But she did not take his last name, obviously. She in 2019 she was named one of Time's top 100 most influential people in the world. But she has a very very small Wikipedia page for being that influential. Now her husband Ezra Levin went to Carleton as well, and also went to Princeton. He started his career with AmeriCorps Vista, deputy policy director for Congressman Lloyd Doggett, who was a member of the Texas Senate, then a justice for the Texas Supreme Court. Then Levin was an associate director of federal policy for At Prosperity Now from 2012 until 2017, where his focus was on homelessness and poverty. So definitely individuals on the progressive side of the movement. And let's see. Created in 2016, Levin, Greenberg, Jeremy Hale, and Angela Padilla, all former congressional staffers, created the online publication Indivisible, a practical guide for resisting the Trump agenda. So, yeah, this definitely seems to have been around since 2016, and I think they were kind of waiting for their moment, if you will. Either that, or they knew that once Trump got reelected, like they hit the ground running, like after the November election. You know what I mean? Because I had never heard of this group before this, and not just No Kings, but even Indivisible. I'm guessing neither of you have heard of it prior either.
Nope.
Interesting. He was also named in the top 100 most influential people in the world, and he and Greenberg were selected by Politico in 2017 and GQ in 2018 for their annual list of most powerful and influential people in Washington D.C. Wow. So these guys are pulling the strings, and they're 38 and 37. Damn. Interesting. That means I got 10 years to do something cool with my life.
Right, yeah, so I was thinking, like, I got 10 years to do something.
Hey, just remember, the Kentucky Colonel didn't found KFC until he was like 60 years old, so you got time. You got time.
And he's still around.
Well, the chicken is. He's not.
He's here in spirit.
I was about to say, because he's dead. He's definitely
He's in
sleeping
our
with
hearts,
chickens.
Brian.
He's in our hearts. No, yeah, he is with the cholesterol. Oh, yeah, he's in our hearts permanently.
That's funny.
So yeah, interesting. So I see 5051. What is that? Did you have any information on that, Zachary?
Nothing.
'Cause I don't even know what that stands for.
It's 50,
Oh.
50, and then 1.
50 protests, 50 states, 1 movement. Interesting. So wait. Yeah, here's what it's. The first 50-51 protests were a decentralized rapid response to the anti-democratic and illegal actions of the Trump administration and its plutocratic allies. The idea of 50 protests, 50 states on one day was born on R5051 and spread rapidly on social media. Okay. So yeah, that seemed to have been where it came from on the Reddit side of things. So 50-51 was a Reddit thing. Indivisible seemed to have been more of a actual organization. So I think they kind of joined forces um, to create this No Kings movement.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, it says down here 50-51 is a peaceful movement. Violence of any kind will not be tolerated. I mean, the thing is that a lot of these protests, and I when I say a lot, I mean like 99% of these protests stay completely peaceful and nonviolent. I mean, sure, there's probably a lot of very aggressive verbal exchanges, which
Oh yeah.
depending on, well, and the thing is, I do want to make this very clear. Um, depending on the state you reside in, verbal threats can be considered disturbing the peace, and some of those can lead to misdemeanor or felony charges. So, um, just a heads
Yeah.
up, you can protest, and you can use your freedom of speech, but some states view the freedom of speech to be limited to not swearing or yelling at other individuals. So just keep that in mind. I don't know
Not
what states
swearing
those
or
are. Yeah.
not swearing or yelling.
hmm Yeah, like raising your voice, causing a disturbance. Like it'll probably get
I
thrown out
get
in court.
causing a disturbance, and I get like menacing
Yeah,
if someone feels threatened.
right.
But
And
like
that's
I don't get swearing. Swearing I don't understand.
well, and that's the thing is it's very loose, and that's the thing is a lot of those cases do get thrown out when they get brought to court
Mm.
to trial and things like that. But yeah, I mean, you can argue that you're disturbing that you're menacing by swearing at someone, that you're threatening someone by swearing at them and being intimidating and
But for
making
that you have to prove that you are afraid for your well-being.
right, exactly. There's a difference between saying you're an ass and I'm going to kick your ass. Like, you know what I mean? There's a difference there.
Well, yeah, but I
No,
don't know how to explain it.
no, I get what you're saying, but yeah, if you're trying to explain it to the people watching, I can understand.
Yeah, I don't understand. There's a difference between I'm gonna say I'm gonna beat you up versus meaning I'm gonna beat you up
Right. Do you know who
is
we need
different.
here to talk about this? McConnell.
Oh yeah, he would be good at this.
Yeah, let's say because he's a civil attorney now. So
He would know all about this.
yeah, one of these days.
It's one of those interesting. I always thought that was an interesting thing to try to prove is my threat. Do you take my threat seriously?
Right.
And
But
if
I
you
think
do,
that
I'm committing a crime.
right, and I think that's the thing though, is like you have to look at everything from the sum of its parts. It's like, are you in that person's face? Did you say it as you were walking past them? Like, do you have something in your hand? Like all that stuff, like I'm sure factors into it.
Factors into it. Yeah,
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 yeah.
I'm sure.
I mean, that's the thing with any criminal case. It's not just one piece of evidence. It's the sum of all pieces of evidence that brings up a charge and a eventual conviction. It's not just one piece, because if you've only got one piece of evidence for a case, it's not
You're
a
gonna
very
get
good case.
torn to shreds. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's not a very good case.
No,
So
no, it is not.
yeah, but no. So I just think that this is kind of like an interesting crossroads. Does this is kind of bubble up into something that's like Zach was saying earlier, like more organized, more consistently prevalent, like throughout the United States? Like, is this something that happens once every month? Because I do vaguely remember some of these protests going on like in the early days of the Trump presidency, like in February, March, things like that. But this one definitely seems to be the largest.
I have a question.
Yeah,
What if so all this is happening on one day, correct? All these
correct.
protests one day. What if do we have enough GART members to go to multiple cities?
Um, yes, I would
Okay.
say so. Probably
Okay.
not every city, but the big
Right.
ones,
I'm saying,
yes.
okay, okay, okay. What happens when one of those
There's
smaller
not
cities,
enough.
there's an issue? Yeah, there's not enough.
That's a great question, Jake. I mean, here, a quick Google search. How many?
Because I keep thinking in the back of my mind, this many protests on the same day, multiple and multiple in the same state. So it's something's gonna happen.
Yeah, my guess is they're going to be very strategic about which cities they get deployed to.
Yeah,
Correct.
I mean, they're gonna have to be.
So there's approximately 325,000 Army National Guard and 108,000 Air National Guard. Now,
Okay.
if we look at this map here from No King's Day, we zoom out. I mean, does it say how many protests there are? Or are we just kind of looking at dots here?
We're basically
I
just
don't
looking at
know.
dots. I don't think it says
So
anywhere.
I didn't see
let's
it anywhere.
let's say there's 300 dots. Let's just say there's 300 dots. You want
Okay.
actually let's go 500. Say there's 500 dots. And when you average it out, let's say that I'm trying to think of the smaller cities too. Let's just say on average each dot gets 4,000 people.
Mhm.
Actually, let's just say 5,000 because that way it makes it 500, 5,000. So if we do that, I can't type in my password on my phone. All right, there we go. So 500 times 5,000. So that right there is 2.5 million people. Now, if you were to divide all the, and this is every single National Guardman,
Mm,
430,000. That's almost 6 people to every one guardsman. Obviously, you get rid of the dots or you add more dots and say the same amount of people show up, that number obviously changes.
changes. Yeah.
But but you're but if you mobilize the entire National Guard, I got to be honest with you, the shit has hit the proverbial oscillator. Like it's hit the fan at that point.
Yeah.
If you're mobilizing the entirety of the National Guard, um, something's wrong. Like something's drastically wrong. Uh, and
I
I
don't know if I don't
yeah.
think that'll happen, but have we ever seen something
So,
this like a protest of this magnitude
I
on
want to
one
see.
day? Is this the biggest ever?
well,
Largest recorded
I guess
protests.
it'll determine how many people show up, but
So let's see here. So in 1970, there was a nationwide protest that had 20 million people in it, and it was for Earth Day.
mm,
The 2017 Women's March was 3.3 to 5.6 million.
okay.
Uh, hands off protest. Oh, okay. So here's a good comparison. Did you guys hear the hands off protests?
Did we
Because
hear of
I
it?
did.
I
I did.
Yeah. Yeah, I've
Okay.
heard of it. I don't know it
So
much about it. I've heard the name.
so that happened this year in April, right?
Hmm.
There were 3 to 5 million people during that protest. So
Oh,
let's just be conservative here and let's say that we're doubling it, right?
yeah.
So instead of 3 to 5, and we'll just take, so 6 to 10, we'll take 8. So 8 million divided by every single National Guard's member mobilized, 430,000. So that brings the number up to 18 people per National Guardsman.
That's a lot of people.
Hmm and let's just say that this number jump. I mean, because I think that this would peak out. In all honesty, I think like the most that you would see. Let's just say it's like, let's just say it is like Earth Day in 1970, where
Mhm.
20 million people come out to this protest, which I don't think that's going to happen, but I could be wrong. But
I
20
don't. Yeah, I
million
don't think
people,
that'll happen either.
that would
But to
put
be
us
fair, I
at.
didn't think this protest was going to happen.
But here we are.
Yeah, but here we are.
But that is 46 people to one National Guardsman if the
Wow.
entire National Guard is mobilized.
Wow.
Yeah. So realistically, I think that the armed forces would only like to mobilize 33% of the National Guard, just a third. So if you've got 46 people divided by 0.33, so that's almost 140 people to one guardsman. That's a lot of people.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah. But again, I want to be very clear. If this were to happen, shit would hit the fan. So
Right.
I want people to go out and voice their opinions peacefully and make sure that their opinions on what is happening are known.
Oh yeah.
But that is definitely just something to keep in mind, is that if there is 20 million people that come out and march on the 14th, it'll be like nothing we've ever seen in our lifetimes.
So I want to go down the conspiracy rabbit hole just a little bit.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
So I have seen quite a few posts, even one from the man Hans Zimmer himself, about among all of the peaceful protests, all of the peaceful protesters, there being plants that are specifically there to cause chaos, to be violent.
From a
From
particular side?
Yeah, so theoretically they would be uh Republican plants basically in there.
Okay.
With just the idea of causing problems to justify Trump taking more control. There's every protest ever basically has had kind of these same fears, where the other side sticking people in there just to make things worse. Uh, I don't know that it's ever like really been proven that that's a thing that has been happening. There's always going to be bad actors, like you can't, but there's bad actors, and then there's your plants that are there specifically to do that. Sometimes there's just bad actors that take advantage of stuff. But should that be something that is happening, uh, how fast do you think this goes from states control to federal control, given kind of what we've already seen in California?
So I just want to point this out, because bringing up what you're saying. So this article was posted July 29th of 2020. Uh, ABC News: man who helped ignite George Floyd riots identified as white supremacist. So, and then just the AI overview. Yes, there were reports of people infiltrating Black Lives Matter protests to cause trouble. Although this is a complex issue with varying perspectives, some individuals, potentially with ulterior motives, were seen engaging in acts of violence or property damage. So, this is definitely something that has happened in the past. And like you said, there's going to be bad actors, but like specific plants by organizations, I don't know. That's a good question, but I think a lot of people do see the opportunity to help out their side by making the other side look bad. But I mean,
But if you have one bad actor in a crowd of, say, 50 good actors,
mhm.
they're gonna
Or-
see that, right?
Well, here's the thing. Depends.
It depends.
If they go right for, say, law enforcement immediately, it's going to get crazy before anyone knows what to do. Like, there's going to be
Correct.
no time
Because the law
to
enforcement is
decipher
going to
who's,
respond.
yeah, there's not going to be time to figure out who's really causing trouble versus who's just there. Because
Yep.
as we've seen, especially even just in LA, once law enforcement kind of gets a little more agitated, and they start making moves, pushing people, uh, shooting their rubber bullets, whatever the case may be. People who are otherwise just kind of peacefully protesting suddenly don't want to be so peaceful anymore because now they feel threatened, they feel in danger.
It's
Hmm.
it's the double-edged sword. I mean, and it's kind of the thing, like, imagine, I'm trying to put it in a metaphor here, but imagine, you're walking along the woods and a bee stings a bear, right? And the bear sees you, doesn't see the bee, but just knows it got stung, right? It's going to come after you. And you have two
Yes.
options. If, as the person, you can either run away or you can try and fight back the bear. That's what's happening in this scenario. Some
You ain't
outside agitator.
outrunning a bear.
Right, but that's the thing. You ain't outrunning the law either. So,
True.
so that's
That is
that's the
true.
thing. So in this instance, the bee, the outside agitator, stung the bear, and then, went away, got off scot free, didn't have to worry about it, and kind of like is laughing in the distance. The bear, law enforcement, gets pissed off that it just got stung. It only sees you. It sees the person standing there and thinks to itself, well, nothing else could have done this. It must be you. And then it goes after them, and the person, you, have two options, like I said, run or fight the bear. And some people are going to run and leave, and some people are going to fight the bear. It really just depends on the person. And that's when it spirals out of control, because then that person hits the bear, then the bear gets even angrier, and then the person's really fighting for their life, and it spirals out of control. That's what happens in a lot of these scenarios. All it takes is one person to set off the dominoes, which is, honestly, we'll probably see that tonight. LA's instituted a curfew. They instituted it last night. I don't think that anything got too crazy last night, but that's all it takes is for somebody just to you know tee things off.
Yeah, but then my thought is if you're those law enforcement officers, you have to be briefed on these quote unquote bad actors.
And I would agree, but there's
So,
not a guarantee your
I
intelligence
know
is going
it's
to be
not a
good.
guarantee. Right, I know
Right.
that.
and
But
that brings up another point that I
Ooh,
read, especially in LA in particular, with the National Guard going there. The LA police are trained in riot control, population
okay.
control.
mhm,
Yep.
The National Guard, not so much,
right.
supposedly. Now, I have seen, I believe, Christy Nome say yes, they are. Uh, but the Marines are definitely not. The Marines are not.
Correct.
Yeah, they are. That's a whole different thing. But if you have your local police trained in riot control, your National
Mhm.
Guard is not. They may not necessarily be equipped to be able to deal with
That's a
things
good
getting
point.
out of hand very quickly.
Yeah, that's a solid point.
Well, and I
Then
want to bring this. Oh,
in
go ahead.
that case, you need to let law enforcement
Yeah, which is
control.
supposed to be how it's going in LA. The LA police are kind of frontline, and the National Guard is there just to support them. Uh, yeah, hard to say if that's actually how it's working. It seems like some places it is. The LA police have a much higher presence, or kind of doing the work. But especially around a lot of the federal buildings and whatnot, the National Guard is kind of full control there. So
Which, I don't necessarily like blame the National Guard for protecting the federal buildings. I mean, they're federal
yeah.
troops protecting
Hmm.
federal buildings. Like, that makes sense. But what I was going to bring up is it's just a recipe for disaster in a sense, right? Because um there's multiple chains of command here. Like, have we thought about that? Like, all it's going to take is for the people who are controlling the National Guard troops to not communicate effectively with the LAPD, and then you sprinkle the Marines on top of that. So you've got three heavily armed hierarchies here and some of them are not trained in riot control and population control. All it takes is for them to just not communicate and things to just, like I said, spiral out of control. It's a very, like, this is a this is a bonfire, like a pile of wood outside, and the base of it is on fire. And it's just a matter of, is the wood wet and the fire will go out, or is the wood dry and is this thing about to spark off? That's the concern.
Yeah, and
That's
that's
the concern. At least that's my concern.
Yeah, when you've got the federal government making decisions on behalf of the National Guard, how long also do you have to wait for those decisions, or do you have once again kind of these untrained people on the ground making decisions on behalf because they need action now? They can't wait for their directions from their higher ups because who knows how long it's going to take to get those orders.
Mhm.
Versus the local police will likely have a much faster response time versus
Mhm.
maybe a more uncontrolled because their National Guard's kind of taking matters in their own hands.
So I want to see something. So let's see. I'm gonna compare this to a situation that kind of got out of hand very quickly, and um, obviously the insurrection very quickly, and that was an instance where there was around 2,300 United States Capitol Police in total. In total, not saying
Mhm.
they were all there at the Capitol. Now I want to see how many people were at January 6th insurrection. So that was 2,000 to 2,500 people, and we saw how chaotic that got.
Mhm.
And we're potentially, if a few million people show up around the country, I mean, you're talking about a much more chaotic situation. Now, obviously, not all the Capitol Police are armed as much as the LAPD is, and same thing as the National Guard and the Marines. But still, I mean, if you remember that day, you remember how chaotic that scene looked, and that was just 2,000 to 2,500 people.
Right.
So, oh, sorry. Let me see. Uh, okay, so that's actually there were more than that. There were more. It's saying, okay, yeah, there you go. So law enforcement said the crowd size ahead of the protest was possibly as much as 80,000. Okay,
Oh, okay.
much different. 2,000 people made it inside the Capitol and they were charged with a crime. So, but 80,000 people showed up in total. Um, So, but yeah, I mean, okay, so there you go, 80,000. So let's just how many police were at January 6th? Let's see if I can find out the answer. So let's see, there were 1,400 on duty at the Capitol at the time. Metropolitan PD sent 250 to the Capitol grounds. So 80,000 divided by 1,650. So that was 48 people to one officer, which is kind of where the number that we were at earlier. If we had an Earth Day size protest of 20 million people, and you have the entire National Guard move. So realistically, if we go for the third, like the 1/3 option, so 1/3 of 20,000 is like, 7 point or 6 point some odd million, like 6.8 million, something like that, 6.75, something close to that. So you've got almost 7 million people with 1/3 of the National Guard mobilized, then you're still at that same ratio. Like that, those numbers, if this is as popular as people are making it seem, those numbers could be met. You know what I mean? And that would be a problem, quite frankly, and especially too. And here's one thing I know, and I know we're starting to go over on time, but I feel like this is kind of important because, like I said, this could, depending on how this goes on Sunday or Saturday, whatever day it was. I think it's Saturday.
Saturday.
Saturday. Like I said, this could be the big news thing for a while. But you got to remember, if all these people start marching on Saturday and don't stop, it still takes time to mobilize troops.
Yeah.
Now, not a ton of time, but there could be 12 to 24 hours where there's nobody. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? And I think that that's definitely a recipe for concern. Um, Especially if things get out of hand. Now, if everything's peaceful, and perfectly hunky dory, then it's no big deal. But as we discussed with the outside actors aspect of things,
I mean,
that might not be the case.
I think it could. When you say no big deal, it could be. It could be made a big deal by either
That's
the
true.
federal government or even if it is peaceful.
Correct. Even if it is peaceful, somebody could
think
still make it a big deal. You're absolutely right.
yeah. It's the unknown factor.
And
Mr.
even
Unknown.
if the vast majority of these are peaceful, if there's even a couple that are ugly, that's it. None of the peaceful ones really matter anymore. The news cycle
Correct.
will be on the non-peaceful ones.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
I want to see here.
Right, and then even if those that are at the peaceful ones, they're going to be seen as the ones rioting. It doesn't matter.
Correct.
Yep. Yeah. Once the violence happens, whether
It's
you
game
were
over.
peaceful or not, you are all violent. That's
right.
It's just
Yep.
that's it.
Yep. That's the narrative that's going to be spun.
That's exactly what it is. That's the narrative that's going to be spun, because you're right. All it takes is okay, so we're up to 4,000 National Guard troops and 700 Marines. So that's from an AP News article that was updated at 3:35 p.m. this afternoon. Let's see. I'm trying to see if there's any other updates. Activated more than 4,000 National Guards members, 7,000 Marines. There's 700 Marines to quell them. Trump has cited a legal provision that allows him to mobilize federal service members when there is a quote a rebellion or danger of a rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States. And Newsom, in his lawsuit, called it a serious breach of state sovereignty. Sovereignty. I made up a new word. Sovereignty. I literally was just like spelling it out in my head, and my brain said, "Yes, that's the one." But let's see. So Newsom apparently spoke with Trump late Friday night after the protests had begun. He said, "quote We talked for almost 20 minutes, and he barely. This issue never came up. I mean, I kept trying to talk about LA. He wanted to talk about all these other issues." And then Trump said the phone call was to deploy the troops. It was late at night. I said, your city's burning down. Your state is in bad trouble. And Newsom maintained that Trump never once brought up the National Guard, and he called him a stone cold liar. Yeah, fun stuff.
I did also see statements Saturday, maybe, or whenever the National Guard was first being deployed. The LAPD had kind of condemned them being deployed because they believed they had it under control.
Correct. I have seen that.
Yeah.
The LAPD has stated multiple times that the protests were like well within their expectations.
Yeah.
And well under control according to their standards. So, yeah, very, very, very interesting times ahead indeed. And I'm sure we'll be talking about them on the Neutral News Network.
I'm sure we will.
Yeah. Well, Zachary, do you have a fun tidbit or fun storyline to cap us off with this evening?
I'm slacking. I actually don't. Probably.
I mean, that's all right. We're
find a
over
little
time
fun one.
anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we can find one.
Yeah, I was about to say, did you know
Let's see.
there are puffins in the UK?
There was a runaway zebra in Tennessee.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
I did see that too. I love
Not
that
only-
you brought that up. We were like, oh yeah, the zebra.
Not only was it a zebra, it was a pet zebra, apparently.
A pet
Well, I
at the
mean,
zoo?
Ed the zebra.
Oh,
Ed.
Ed. Hope he had fun.
Where's Ed and Eddie?
The
The
they're on.
cul-de-sac.
Yeah,
Or where is it? What is
interesting.
it? Marty the lion? Is that what it is from Madagascar?
Marty.
No,
I think
Marty
that,
was.
Was Marty the zebra?
Marty might have been. Oh, wait.
I-
Melvin? Melvin
Mel.
was the
I feel like
giraffe.
Melvin was the giraffe. Yeah.
Yeah. Alex is the lion. Marty the It's Marty. Yeah, Marty's the zebra.
And Alex is the lion. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
not that long ago, or well, a month before Ed the zebra here, there was a runaway kangaroo that shut down part of an Alabama interstate for a little while. So
Alabama.
even the zoo creatures have had enough, apparently.
All right.
The zoo
Well,
creatures.
on that note, when the zoo creatures give up, you don't have to.
So do we.
No.
Yeah.
The duality of man.
Yeah,
They give up,
yeah.
so we don't have to.
Right.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, thank you so much for watching the Neutral News Network. Please like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, and please feel free to give us any suggestions on stuff that you think we should cover. Unless there's obviously big breaking news, but
And,
outside of that, we
you know,
appreciate you for tuning in.
I'm curious if any listeners go to a protest and you want to share your experience.
Would be
Oh,
real
yeah,
interested to hear
Yeah,
what
that
it's
would be-
like from people who actually go.
Yeah,
Correct.
that would be interesting.
Yep. All righty. Well,